Okay, so let's start. Today we're talking about wow lessons, such a loud name, right? So here we mean not only the wow lessons that we have on the platform, which are like maybe less standard and more entertaining lessons, but lessons that attract your students' attention to the course in general, something that helps your students see their progress, something that make them stay with you ideally forever, yes, but for a long time. Of course, as usual, I was curious to ask you a couple of questions. The first one was if you ever prepare special tailor-made lessons for your students. And as we can see, the most popular response was if the student is struggling, if you see that maybe what you usually do, your standard course is not enough, you do something more specialized for your student. Also, the popular responses were just to introduce some variety every now and again, you prepare something special. If the students ask about it, or sometimes you just add some elements to your standard lessons from the platform, just for them to feel that they're still special, they're still getting something something personal for them. As for adding something to the standard lessons from the platform, most of you do that. As we can see, no one has chosen, no, I don't have time for that, which is nice. And again, what is popular here is some additional grammar and vocabulary practice, connecting the lesson to the students' aims, and speaking practice and more personalized warm-ups. Well, actually, whatever we can personalize, whatever we can add something to, I think at different lessons in different situations, you all do at least something for your students. So everything looks optimistic, but let's just discuss some questions to share our experience. So the first question was actually asked by one of our colleagues. So what do you think, ladies and gentlemen? How often does it make sense to teach such lessons? Something specific, something tailor-made, something per your students' request, or if you see some struggles? So what could be a reasonable interval between those lessons? Anyone?
May I answer?
Yes, sure.
I think it makes sense when a student needs to hear your explanation about a difficult topic, or if you see that he or she gets bored with your lessons because they are in the same way, they are made in the same way.
Right, if you see some problems, of course, but if we are trying to be smart, yes, time bound here, what about the timing? How often would you recommend doing that? Like once a week, once a month, once a year?
I think once a month is really a good variant, because once a week I think is too often, and once a year certainly it's too seldom.
Okay.
Yeah, once a month. I don't think that even twice a month is good, because then a student will not feel that there is something special made for him. That may be a kind of surprise, a kind of unexpected pleasure. So that's why we shouldn't do such things too often.
Okay, yes. So
I think it's quite enough.
Also some kind of a positive reinforcement. Yes, so if the student is doing well, even if you don't see any problems, but you reward the student with this special lesson. Okay, makes sense.
Certainly, because we know what are the interests of the student, and the student does well, he does all the homework, he never misses classes, just for him not to feel that it is a routine, that there is some, just to make a break out of that routine, that can become a routine. Okay. So that's why from time to time we should do such lessons.
Sorry, and what should we do to diverse our lessons? So as for me, I unfortunately I haven't taken part in this in this course, on the platform. So I just my leader course just sent me a link a few minutes ago, and I decided to take part. But could you explain how can we diverse our lessons? So if the student is bored with the routine classes with Wimbox platform, what can we do to reinforce him, to bring some new, I don't know, interesting information? Right. What should we do?
Well, that's what we're discussing today. So at the end of the seminar, I'll ask you if you have enough ideas for the future. Okay, that's a good question, right?
May I say something? Yeah, just so hello, first of all. Nice to speak to you, nice to see you. So not maybe to just complete a new lesson, but you know what is interesting, that sometimes we can find some additional information, okay, in other sources that we can find in our the Wimbox, in the sources that we have, and therefore we have to refer to these materials, okay. For instance, I use Morpheme a lot, because a lot of just everything is grouped, very well. And let's say the user definite articles, for instance, okay, the student needs some extra explanation about it, because whatever we have, and this is really some extra information, okay, that we can find in our during our lessons. So, and therefore I am to refer to those materials. So I just screenshot all these materials and send to them, or during the lessons to distribute them. So, and they are really very useful. So they are very, very satisfied because of this extra information. Yeah.
Right. Okay. So extra information is nice sometimes, and as someone said in the chat, some students really like the platform. They didn't want anything outside.
You know why? Because I'm sorry to interrupt you. Because sometimes, everything is, just not grouped, not collected in one thing. But what students tend to have everything in a grouped way. Yes. For instance, when we pass, let's say irregular verbs, and especially at that of elementary level, yes, they start saying just, oh, are there any other regular verbs? Are these all the irregular verbs that we have in this list? And so accordingly, to send some extra, just some other sources, to let them know about general, the most used, let's say, regular verbs that we have in English.
Okay.
Can I say something? It's Terry. I have one advanced student who does only conversational English, and we just talk. He doesn't put anything on the platform. He doesn't.
I'm sorry to interrupt you, Terry. We have a feedback from someone.
I hear that as well.
So I can hear you, and I can hear myself twice. That's
yes, me too.
Very distracting. So I don't know who's doing that. But someone should mute their microphone.
Can I come back in? Oh, there was. Somebody's muted, I think. Is that better?
Yes, I think now it's better.
Also, I put my headset on because I didn't have it on before. Maybe that made a difference.
Maybe.
Yeah. Okay, so I have one advanced student who doesn't want to do any lessons off the platform at all. He just does straight conversational lessons, and I correct his structure and his vocab, grammar as we go, but it's very seldom that I need to correct much. And I just find I have 2 lessons a week with him, and he discusses whatever. Today we discussed different cultures, and not off the platform at all. We just go, I look on Google while we're going, and it's really great. And I look forward to my lessons with him so much. I've now just got 2 more students, also advanced, and our plan is that we are going to do 1 lesson a week off the platform, and 1 lesson a week where I will just put stuff onto a lesson for them, whatever they want to discuss. They are advanced, and they are businessmen, and they really just need to improve their spoken. There's a really nice section on presentations, which is great for the businessmen. And so we're just going to do 1 lesson off the platform, and 1 lesson a week is just going to be as it goes. which
Right.
they seem to really enjoy it. You know, they've had, I've got one student who's purchased 59 lessons, you know, so
It's impressive.
yeah, so it's really great. And I just find that as I don't have any kids, so it's quite nice. I have all adults, and the businessmen seem to be more interested in what goes on around the world, and just be able to speak about a variety of topics. I could ask them a question and be able to just answer it, you know, off the cuff, which they really, really enjoy. So yeah, that's my thing, my input, and I really enjoy those lessons.
Absolutely. And moreover, if you start looking into it and reading some books on teaching one-on-one, you will find a lot of advice to teach personalized lessons all the time. The students should provide the content and the teacher the form. So let's say they need to make presentations, or they need to discuss this and that with your colleagues. So they give you what they want to talk about, and you show them how you do it in English, right?
Yeah.
Of course, the platform makes things easier because everything is prepared. That's why we do that. Yes, but if you see that the student really needs something more personalized, more related to his real life needs, and if you can do it, if you have time to prepare and so on, that's only for the better. That benefits the student a lot.
Absolutely.
Okay. A good remark in the chat: have a wow lesson when there are 2 paid lessons left. A good thing to remember, right? To motivate the student to pay for more lessons. Okay, so a lot of you said that it's important to connect the lesson to students' aims, and in this way it's, you know, you add some personalized touch to the lesson. How can you do it if they seem absolutely unrelated? If you have an IT guy who needs English to make presentations to his clients, and you are going through the topic sport at the intermediate level, how can you connect them?
If he will have to interact with those clients, the topic of sport may come up.
What if it doesn't? What if it never does from his experience?
Sometimes people use expressions like from sports language to describe real life situations. So when you have a draw, for example, we had a meeting and it was draw. So no one won. So sometimes the vocabulary can be made more diverse if you use some sport idioms.
I had a meeting with my son's teacher 2 days ago, and I heard a baseball idiom, even if we were discussing math, but he said, okay, I will touch base with him tomorrow and make sure that he knows blah, 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 blah.
And so this is all idiomatic.
Sorry, can I add something?
Yes.
I just wanted to answer your question. Basically, I would suggest him to role play the presentation, because sport can be, for example, I can turn it into a presentation about a new sport equipment website. Why not? It sounds pretty interesting, I think.
Right, so you can relate, but if he knows that he never works with sport equipment websites, he might be unwilling to do it. Is there anything that we teach that can be related to any real life topic?
For a student who works in IT needs English to make presentation for clients.
If it's not vocabulary, then maybe...
Yeah, there is some grammar that can be useful.
Right. Grammar can be related to anything. If I'm not mistaken, the topic sport is a context for revising
past tenses.
Yes, narrative tenses. I'm looking for the word. Narrative tenses, past tenses. So he can be telling his clients about some previous projects or about the work on this presentation, what they were doing at the beginning and so on. So it could help anyway. You can actually ask the student, how can you use this material, these structures, this information in your work? Let the student make those connections. That helps, makes them more autonomous. Okay, and another question that we come across, and I can see that Elisa is here, and she's maybe one of the people who ask this question all the time, that the student sometimes asks for a special lesson related to this, devoted to that, and then they come absolutely unprepared. So how much should they contribute to the preparation of this lesson if they ask you for something that really requires a lot of time, a lot of effort from your side? And how can you make them do it, actually?
For instance, they could prepare some special vocab to contribute to talk on the topic, or for example, they can prepare some questions that we are going to discuss, or some really weird topics, you know, that I wouldn't come up with because I'm not into this, you know, branch of science and know whatever.
At least they should make us know what exactly is especially interesting for them. For us to be absolutely sure that we are doing the right thing.
Actually, may I say, I've got a student, she's an IT specialist, and she has got 2 jobs. Her main job, she works as an IT specialist, and her second job, she's a personal stylist. And she's very interested in fashion, and I took with her pre-intermediate course, like a general Beambox platform, and we're thinking of taking speaking classes. Yeah, we've got it on Beambox, but I'm not sure that there is a specific topic about fashion or something like this, and I don't know how can I bring something new into our lessons, so to talk about fashion and clothes and different trends. So is it necessary for me to, for example, is it necessary for me to take the course like individual lessons, or I can do it without this course? So
I think you should just see what your student really needs. So it could be some absolutely new lesson created by you from scratch. It could be some addition to the general course, maybe different vocabulary for the grammar that you are studying in the general course. I don't know. I haven't seen your student, right? But first of all, you should really clarify her needs. Before you start planning a course or planning a lesson, you should know what the student actually needs, right?
Yeah, in a year she's going to participate in a fashion show in Milan, and she wants to use her English there.
Okay, to use her English, how? Will she make a speech there? Will she just communicate with other designers? Will she have some business negotiations, you know?
I think, yes, communication with other designers, something like that.
Right, but if it's a casual conversation or if it's some, you know, business negotiation, it's a different thing.
Another problem, you know, can be in those cases when the students themselves don't know what they want, you know. This can be another problem that we really face, you know. Sometimes they say, oh, we have very little time and I'm just going on business trip, and whatever you give, it seems not satisfactory, not enough for them. I don't want this, I want something else. You know, this is another problem, okay, that in my opinion, teachers can face because of not having enough time. For, let's say, I remember that I had a student, a woman, let's say 50, and she was going on a business trip, and you know, she had indeed very little time, and she wanted somehow to improve her English, but you know, just elementary level, and you know, we needed some grammar, you know, practice and some vocabulary practice, and you know, whatever I gave, it seems not satisfactory for her. She wanted something more. Maybe she really didn't know what she wanted. She wanted to know English, but in what way, you know? So this was, you know, and the students themselves are to define, you know, what they really want, so that this will guide us, okay?
Absolutely. It happens that a person doesn't know what they want. I think it happens not only with English language students.
Yes, they want to know the language, but they don't know how. You know?
We all go shopping and just stare at all those clothes. Right?
Yeah.
We don't know what we want. I'm sure everyone present here has at least once in their life opened a fridge and what looks nice here, what's tasty. Happens. You know, we're all human. Still, if you say, okay, what is your goal? What are your needs? They could be lost, yes. But if you ask more specific questions, like when you were using English last, what was hard for you to do? What were you not confident about, or something like this? They can tell you more specific things.
May I add something?
Sure.
Well, actually, to the previous statement, yes, that students sometimes don't want what they want. And I had a special request for a personalized lesson, and my student said, I need something for travel because I'll go to the business meeting to Netherlands and say, okay, for travel. But then I started thinking myself, what will he be doing there? So what is his daily activity there, with whom he is going to talk about, and about what? And then after a set of clarifying questions, I clearly understood that he doesn't need a lesson on traveling. So it's absolutely not his need. He needed a lesson how to participate in a company training. And then I found a special lesson on the platform, how to ask questions, how to ask person to clarify something if you don't understand. So yes, I think that client sometimes actually maybe he knew what he needed, but he couldn't explain it. So it's our task to clarify it and to have to ask as much clarifying questions as we need to prepare the lesson.
Absolutely, absolutely. I agree with that completely. It happens all the time that they think in some very broad category. So I am traveling, that's why I need English for traveling. In fact, it's not true. Or I am a microbiologist, I need English for microbiologists. When in fact he needs English for, I don't know, communicating with some friends. Okay, so when we start planning all those lessons, when we know what the student needs and we start actually planning, what is important for us? As you can see, interest in materials, clear lesson aims, and doing what your student needs. I would also include here helping them notice progress and reacting to their emergent needs. Which is really important to include all of those. I would also include constructive feedback. It's also very important. And let's look at some of those points in detail. Let's start with lesson aims, even if it was not the most popular was interest in materials. But I think, you know, before we start looking for the materials, we should know why we need those materials, what we're going to do with them. While, of course, you know, especially those of you who have some formal teaching education from some university, you probably remember how boring it was to write lesson plans as a trainee teacher with your tutor checking them and criticizing and so on. I don't want to say that you have to write all those detailed lesson plans. No, of course, we don't have time for that, right? But to formulate your clear aims, it doesn't take a lot of time if you try to answer these three questions. What is the student, not you, the teacher, but the student going to do? How exactly? And why does the student need it? That's important to imagine all those three answers to the questions before you start your lesson. Let me highlight it again. It's really good if your lesson aims are student-centered, not teacher-centered. You all can speak English. We know that. You can do it perfectly. It's not for you, it's for the student to practice. So the main question, if we shorten it to one question, even maybe three questions are too many, but the most important one question would be, what will the student be better able to do at the end of the lesson that they can't do at the beginning? better able, because we know that learning and teaching don't always coincide. Maybe you teach it today, but the student still needs more time, but at least he will be more aware of something, more conscious about something, more confident in using something. Yes, maybe not perfect, but at least better able to do something. Let me show you some aims, and which of them do you think are clear enough for us to start preparing the lesson?
So, first one is clear.
Is clear?
I think it's still clear. I mean, you will need
Should
to.
it be clear? I'm sorry.
Maybe you have to add extra information. Why will he need those mixed conditionals?
Actually, he doesn't. He doesn't need it. I guess in real conversation, and
Okay.
it's just a grammar material. But I'm not sure that native speakers use them quite often.
Well, I would say they do. They
You
do
can
use
ask
quite a
Terry.
bit. You can
I'm
use
sorry. Should it be clear for a student or for a teacher?
them. It should answer the questions what, why, and how in any order. But okay, let's start with the first one.
Yes.
The student will practice mixed conditional. Is it a name, or is it a name or a type of the activity?
Type, of course.
Right, but we don't know why. So the student doesn't need mixed conditionals. The student needs to be able to talk about hypothetical situations. The student needs to be able to maybe regret about something. Yes, if I had known it before, I wouldn't be working here now. That's what the student needs, not practicing mixed conditionals. Even if it starts with the words the student, right, it's focused on the student, still it's not enough for a name. And how exactly will they practice? Will it be just filling the gaps, or will it be some storytelling? It's also important to imagine.
I think that the best way is to ask him or her to imagine maybe some personal situations that they have experienced in their life and regret about something. For example, yeah, what do you regret about? And he can make up several questions according from his practice. And I think it's better because when you use your own experience, you memorize it better.
Okay, yeah, you just planned a whole lesson for us. Right, so again, what, how, and why. And I agree with those who put 2, 4, and 6 in the chat, because we can see what they're going to know better, what are they going to be able to do better, more aware of, and so on. And how exactly you will achieve it, and why the student needs it. To use certain vocabulary in informal speech, or to listen for gist better in certain contexts, or to be able to use modal verbs talking about some particular things, yes, to speculate, models of speculation, and so on. And again, how exactly? With the help of a guided discovery, a worksheet, or by noticing stress and paying attention to it while listening, and so on. Make sure when you formulate your lesson aims, you take your time. It really doesn't take much, just a couple of minutes to have something like this in your head, or better on paper. The next point that you guys chose as something very important is interest in materials. And well, I agree with you completely that boring materials can spoil the lesson. Ideally, it's nice if you can choose something authentic, something up to date, something that your student needs, and it can be anything. It can be something that you don't find in real course books. Like I like actually giving this example of my student who was interested in baking bread. very unusual hobby, right? But if your student needs it, why not? If she wanted to read different blogs from different bakers from all over the world, why not? And whatever you find teachable. Sometimes you can just scroll through your Facebook feed and find some funny thing that you think might be interesting or instructive. You can also bring it to the lesson. It could be some unusual warm-up for your student. And as you can see, here is a quote that you have to be interested. Yes, if you're interested in your student, in teaching, in the world around you in general, of course you will be able to find something interesting.
And sorry, and how should we upload them? Through attachments on Vimeo?
Yes, why not?
So I've never used it, and is it difficult to use it? So first so what kind of documents can we attach there?
I believe if we start talking about such technicalities now, we'll, waste a lot of our time, and we don't have enough.
Sorry, but how
you must have a group leader. You must have a group leader who can help you with that. Okay. Right. So let's look at some examples. This is something from my mail, an email from my daughter's math teacher. I can give you a minute to look through it, and what kind of lesson can we build on that? So this is something authentic, right?
May something?
Mm-hmm.
So maybe the grammar topic can be future continuous and all other options to speak about the future. And then this topic is maybe the one that relates to almost everyone, because business people make arrangements, because everyone makes arrangements and have meetings. And so I think about where to implement the skills, yes, like everywhere. So differences between just present continuous and present continuous for future forms, future needs.
Okay.
I think it's also an option to look at the way emails are written, because this is proper official email.
Besides, we can write another email. Maybe I have questions. Maybe, okay, so the first question here is, are you choosing the best homework option for each week? How do I, as a parent, understand which is the best option for my child? Maybe she's choosing something that is not the best option for her. How can I help her with that? What if she's struggling with her quizzes, tests, or whatever? What if she, I don't know, has some other questions and I want to help her? What do I do with that? So we can write an email. Using the information, it's not the whole email, it's very long. Sorry.
Also, we can teach on linkers that we use to build better. This is great pleasure, and usually people don't use it.
Right.
Somehow they forget about it.
A lot of good discourse markers here. Yeah, that's a good email to learn from. Okay, let's continue. Another thing, as you can see, yesterday, it's from the BBC website. Something very new, a new article about Harry Potter being used at some law universities. Why? Interesting. So what can we teach here?
Passive is the usage of passive here is greatly visible, like which is entitled, is expected, so we can see how it's used.
Okay. It's not only grammar that we can teach, right?
Yeah, of course.
Think about but it's a good idea. Yes.
In general, you can get into long discussion about the books and what your student got from those books, and real life lessons from those books.
Yeah, exactly. So what book could be good to teach on their professional sphere, maybe some fiction books that is not related, right?
Oh, sorry, may I interfere?
Sure.
Oh, yeah, once I had a student, a law student, and he needed so he needed to be prepared for his postgraduate program for entrance examination, and we started our lessons with Bilbo's contract.
Great idea.
Yeah, yes, it was very interesting, and he was very excited, and I really had a good rapport with this student, and actually he passed his exam with an excellent mark afterwards.
Wonderful.
Yes, it was a really a very good idea to choose Bilbo's, because we all know these guys from the Hobbit movies and so on. Thank you. Thank you.
Okay, thanks. That's an excellent example. So we can work on this topic, just a fiction book to help in some professional sphere. We can use the lexical approach and find a lot of good collocations here, grammar, whatever you want. It's a long article. You can find a lot of examples of different structures. It could be a source for just speaking, creative writing, anything, whatever you need. But again, it's something new, and it's important for us to sometimes surprise our students, tell them something that they don't know, not just, English-wise, but about some things about the world in general. Okay. Sometimes students need to make presentations. Here it's just some poster with different ideas that are important for a presentation. If you ever worked with presentations, what do you do? What do you think is really helpful for your students? Not necessarily from this poster only, maybe something else that you think is important.
I had this experience of preparing a student for the presentation, and I had some doubts. So when we were working with his materials and with his slides, I was giving a lot of suggestions how to redo them and what to tell about each slide. And I was trying to get this into him, but in the end I was thinking, why? Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe he knows what to say. But when we were doing runs and dry runs, and he was doing very bad, and I didn't know how to tell him. And in the end I was thinking, maybe I should just write the text that he should present, and he will just read it, because his English wasn't good enough. And I didn't know he's 35-year-old man, so he has been doing trainings, and he's a psychologist, so he must know all this. He must have these presentation skills. The problem is just transferring them from Russian into English. And for me, I had a dilemma if I should work on this, or maybe work more on his language and give him an idea what to say. Well, it
depends on what exactly he was doing, but again, like I said before, they know the what, and we're giving them the how, right? How to do it in English. Maybe he's not aware of all those things that influence his speech, like using pauses, not just talking.
It wasn't the case. It was a lot of long pauses.
Okay, and a lot of long pauses spoil the impression, and using visuals and so on, and maybe making a joke. Maybe he doesn't know that.
More real-life stories can make you
if you're reading aloud, please mute your microphone. If you have something to share, go ahead.
Okay.
Okay, thanks.
I want to say something. Right. I had some students that were preparing PowerPoint presentations, and we did a lot of work with one of them. First, we just prepared the text of his presentation, and then it was important for him to practice how he will do it. So we practiced some phrases that he can use while talking to the audience, and we tried to do it in a different ways. to do it formally, to do it a little bit informally. And I tried to interrupt him, asking him questions. And it took us several weeks. And by the end of it, he became more free in the way how he did it. So I think the practice and like you should set some borders, maybe limits, how he can do it, and but at the same time give him some freedom, help him to feel that freedom of presentation, and it helps him to overcome the barrier.
Right, it sounds like really great ideas. And also I would recommend looking at some speeches that you think, some presentations that you think are successful. You can find lots of examples online. You can listen to TED Talks, for instance, and analyze why. Why are those speakers successful? What is so good in their speech? What makes the listeners listen to them, and so on. And see how you can adjust those ideas to your particular speech or presentation. Besides, the fact that they are used to making speeches in their native language doesn't mean that they can do it successfully in English, even with good vocabulary and grammar, because the rhetoric tradition, let's say, is a bit different. The same goes for the emails, by the way. Sometimes people are used to some really bureaucratic Russian, and it's hard for them to write something legible in English because they have different different style of writing. Pardon?
No, nothing. I was just maybe.
Okay, so as for the presentations, again, analyze some good speeches, good presentations, see what you can borrow, maybe the whole structures, constructions, some linkers between parts, some intonation patterns as well, and practice. Test each test. Yes, the student is presenting, you give some feedback, see what could be improved, and he's presenting again, and the second run would definitely be better. All right, and just some funny things that you can find, whichever you can find. I googled funny pictures, that's what I got. What can we teach from these two pictures? Of course, separate ideas, choose one of them.
You can teach first of all, describing a picture in general, using both of them.
I'm sorry. When do we actually describe pictures in real life? When does that happen? When was the last time you described a picture to someone?
But you have to do it in exam if you're preparing for.
Okay, if it's not an exam preparation. Okay, Evgeny says never.
Never, yes, but you can also talk about adjectives to describe people looking at the right picture.
You can teach present continuous.
For example, you had a trip and came back, and then you have to do. You could describe a picture to someone. Just giving details of what you had experienced.
Right, you give details, but you don't see. In this picture, you can see the ocean. There are 3 palm trees to the left.
Right.
No, you don't say that, right?
Like pieces of furniture, for example, when we're giving, pictures are also great help, yeah? The vocabulary we give, for instance, right now I'm giving one of my students, like names of specific furniture and or rooms, like rooms in a flat. And, visual, yes, whatever is visual is really very effective in my.
So we can use different ideas, but it's just important to have some information gap or some different opinions, not to talk about the things that we both can see, that there are 2 people, one of them is huge, another one is small, and they have a dog. Well, there's no information exchange in it, right? But it can be just a prompt for a discussion or wonderful idea. Possible hashtag for the pictures, appearance and personality. We can see what they look like. What kind of people are they? We can practice that. We can, as for the grammar is like a universal thing that you can attach to any picture. As for this Indian train, what grammar can we practice here?
Quantifiers.
Quantifiers would work. What else? Oops, sorry.
Most of them, some of them, perhaps, yes, most of them are where, some of them are there, yeah. Like.
Right.
Degrees of comparison.
Right. Compare with the trains in your country. Okay. Preposition.
Maybe some phrasal verbs.
Maybe a lot of them. Okay. Or we can imagine a conversation between two people on this train. Could be funny too. Conditionals again. Oh, Irina. Great minds think alike.
Have you ever been in this situation, like this?
And in general, yeah, life in your country versus in this picture. Okay. Wonderful. Yeah. So
child labor or something like that.
Yeah, all the wonderful topics. So again, whatever catches your attention anywhere, you can bring to your lesson. It could be some real, something that you found in the street. Why not? Some beautiful yellow and red leaves. Talk about them if you are creative enough.
But anyway, we should use like a short warm-up. Yeah, it's going to be like 3 to 5 lessons, and we can't just start doing the material from Limbox without this warm-up. Yeah, so first we should talk about how his day was and so on and so forth.
Of course, it's important for the person to switch to English, to switch to you as a person. Sometimes it happens that your student has just finished his business meeting or has just come home from work and from a long commute and so on. Or it could be a mom still thinking about her child playing in the next room, and she or he, they need this time to, you know, start thinking in English, start thinking like a student, and of course this warm-up, you know, as in exercising, you can start running right away for an hour because that's what they're going to do. But if you do some exercises before running, it will be easier for you. Right, reacting to emergent needs, something that sounds like the dogma approach, if you know what I'm talking about, but it doesn't mean that if you react to a student's needs, language needs that appear during the lesson that you can see, it doesn't mean that you have to throw away all your course books and never use the platform. You can still use any materials that are prepared, any ready-made things, but you have to take into account that material writers don't know your student, this particular person that you are teaching today. And some questions could be too easy or too difficult for your students. Some lexis could be, again, too easy or too difficult, or maybe whatever is chosen to pre-teach before listening, let's say, is not what your student doesn't know, and you will have to pre-teach different words to help them. You are teaching the person, not the plan. While it's very nice if you have a lesson plan to tick off everything done, sometimes it turns out in the middle of the lesson that your student doesn't know something really important, and you should deal with that first before moving to your next stage, which is important because you are trying to help this person get better in English, right? So it's okay if you stop and focus on something that just came up, instead of rushing through the slides, rushing through your lesson in order to complete all the stages. You should also give them opportunities for noticing language, not just spoon-feeding them, you know, whatever is planned, but maybe sometimes it takes more time for them to look through the text and find the examples of using this or that structure, or to clarify how some vocabulary is used. But in this case, they own the language. They realize that, oh, this structure is used to talk about plans. I talk about my plans too. It's important for me to know that. And, you know, like some metaphor, view your course, your platform materials as a cookery book. But feel free to improvise. If you do cook, you know that you don't have to follow the recipe to the letter. You can add your own seasoning. You can maybe add some other ingredients, you can be more creative, and you can end up having something really delicious, which is good for us and our students, right? As for activities themselves, it's important to have them well-paced, that it's not too fast, you're not rushing your student, not too slow for them to fall asleep. You're doing something realistic and meaningful. So ask this question: do people do it in real life? When was the last time I did that? Before you start asking them to describe the picture or to retell the story that you both have just read and you both know what happened in the story. So change it a bit to make the activity realistic. And of course, variety is always good for our students. While they do like some routines, while they like to have something predictable in the lesson, still, if it's not, all the same type of activities every lesson and every week, it makes your lessons more interesting, even if they're pretty standard according to the platform. Sometimes you can just add one more vocabulary game and the student will wake up and appreciate some additional entertainment, which is not just entertaining but also instructive, because it's a vocabulary game, not just a game. If you could please share some activities that really help you make even standard lessons more interesting, more engaging for your students, please go ahead, share something with us.
I'm sorry. Go ahead, Alina.
Okay, so I'll use chain drill. Sometimes when we practice in some structure which student knows the rules, but he cannot manage his speech. So in this case, I suggest chain drills. And we create kind of story, so it works very well with irregular verbs. We have some suggestion of this game on the platform in one of the pre-intermediate lessons. But I try to make it a little bit surreal, and then when I suggest some unusual verbs, and we really have fun because students imagine all this situation and we repeat the story again and again, and usually it's a lot of fun. And
so
then
it's like a snowball, yes?
Yeah, like a snowball, exactly. So I, for example, I said, okay, I found $100 and bought a lot of ice cream. And then a student suggests something else, and I make it a little bit absurd, and then it becomes funny, but still instructive. And some fillers, maybe like 1 minute funny video which focuses on some of the grammar we studied today. And I use it not for a warm-up, but in the middle of the lesson when student is a little bit bored, maybe a little bit tired, thinking that, oh, this grammar is too hard for me to study. Then I send him this, I ask him to watch this video, and it really helps them to relax and understand that, okay, I can go on, I can study this grammar.
Right, okay, thanks.
I'm sorry, do you use just YouTube videos, or do you have some special sites?
Well, sometimes it can be even Facebook, so not every video is on the YouTube. So in this case, I just copy the link, and it's very short video, so I ask student to watch it himself, and I know the content already.
Okay, great. Luda?
I want to give you an example. Last year I had a student, she studied biology, and during our lessons we were reading and discussing different articles on different topics related to the subject that she was studying. And at one point I suggested her to prepare a talk show. Just imagine that we will invite for our lessons the authors of these articles. Some of them have very controversial opinions, very different. And I asked her to prepare the questions she'd like to ask these authors. But then when we were reenacting this talk show, I was asking questions and she took parts of these authors one at a time. And it was really funny trying to imagine how each author can defend his point of view and at the same time arguing with another person. So it was very interesting.
Interesting indeed. Okay, if you guys have more ideas, please share in the chat, and I would like to focus on feedback too while we're still here. No one is running away to the lesson. So when you are given, oh my battery is running low and my charger is far away. So feedback, it's important to show the student what they have done well. So some ta-da list, now you have done this, you have accomplished that, well done. If you see some things that didn't go well, that they still have to work on, make an action plan, not just, oh, you made a lot of mistakes with the regular verbs, but now we need to practice this. Next time, we need to work on that. So what are you going to do about it? Not just you failed, but something constructive. Reflect on the results. What helped your student? Why was the second listening easier? What did they take into account? How did they improve? And elicit real-life application. So, okay, so we've studied this. Where can you use it? How can you use it in real life? What else can you listen in this way by paying attention to stress patterns? We were speculating about some, crop fields and other strange signs. Where else can you use models of speculation? What else can you discuss with their help? Okay, so for them to see how to apply this knowledge. I suppose we don't really have time to discuss this case study, unfortunately, but just maybe if you have some quick ideas, if you read this before and maybe thought about it, just didn't have time to message your group leader. So again, my real student who is quite a cat, doesn't do much in real life and is quite lazy about her English. If I want to plan a wow lesson for her to revise narrative tenses, what can I do? What could be some good materials, good activities for her?
Sorry, maybe if she's interested in watching some real life shows, she could watch an episode of such a show and retell it to you, and you could ask clarifying questions and maybe ask her how would she behave in this situation. It will also be, well, for conditionals, for example.
Okay, or write the next episode.
Yeah, exactly.
If we watched it together, okay, we can discuss it, but we both know the information. For her to do something new, something with some information gap. Yes, what happened next? How did the story continue? Okay, shows work. What else?
Maybe describe one of the trips that she had with her husband. The best. Tell me about the best trip you had together and why did you like it? What was so special about it?
Or writing some kind of a diary. I actually had her do that once when I don't remember where they traveled, but she was writing some, summaries of the day to me every day in the evening. Yeah, and as it's in the evening, it's all in narrative tenses, so that worked too. Anything else?
Someone says discuss a painting.
No, discussing paintings, yes. If the person is interested in that. Not sure about my student though, if she would discuss a painting with lots of pleasure. Okay, making up some stories about whichever is interesting to the student, yeah, that would work. But let me sum it up, and if it's not obvious yet, let me state it again, that one wow lesson is not enough. We should make them every now and again, and between them and during them, we should, again, be interested in the students, listen to them actively. Have some routines that they like. Maybe you start with discussing some short videos and you finish with playing some game. That's nice for them. Be consistent in general, so that the student has an impression that you have a long-term plan, that you are not jumping from topic to topic, but you know what you're doing with them, you know what you are teaching, so that they don't doubt your authority, your proficiency, and so on. Together with that, don't be too predictable. Sometimes surprise your student with some new information, some unusual activity, some unusual content, unusual form to work with this content, and so on. So surprise them and keep them on alert, keep them interested, and well, you will have long-term students if you follow these tips. I hope it was of some assistance. I see that some of you are ready to run to your next lessons. I can spare a quick minute if you still have a question or two.
I want to ask, but not a question. Is it possible for you to give us this presentation in maybe PDF file or something? Because last time it was the link to the video.
Oh, okay. I'll let Nikita know, who's in charge of sharing everything with you, and he will give you the link to the presentation too.
Thank you.
Right. So, and there will be a follow-up form. If you still have some questions, please ask them. If you have some feedback, it really warms my heart if I read those feedback messages, and I can see that I really did something useful, something that you can actually put into practice. I will also share a collection of great speaking activities by Scott Thornberry. They should help you too. So it's been a pleasure as usual. I enjoyed the seminar a lot. I hope it was of some assistance. So thanks everyone. Enjoy your teaching and hope to talk to you soon.
Thank you.
Thank you. Goodbye.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.